Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. Well, the Yankees sure sucked last night. They're down 3 games to this many in the World Series, and if they lose tonight and get swept by the Dodgers, they will never live it down, nor should they. I went to the game last night with my sexy teenage boyfriend, who's not really a teenager. He's in his 40s. But he's dead sexy. Hello. And we got to hobnob with some pretty famous people last night. We saw Kate Hudson. She looked super good. And I got to talk to Richard Gere, which was exciting. He's a Buddhist, I do believe. And so he meditates a lot. So he's always happy. And he was very happy. And he is a Yankees fan. And he was happy to talk about baseball. And I reminded him that he and I spoke for 2 hours at a party in the 90s. And he had absolutely zero recollection of it. And why would he? Because that's what happens to famous people. Like, they just have these boring conversations throughout their lives, which to the people they're talking to are the most important conversation they've ever had. And they're like, yeah, well. But he was nice. He was there with his very tall, handsome son, Homer, who is graduating from college. And Homer is going to be an actor, and I bet he will be famous because he has great genes, and he seems like a nice kid with a good head on his shoulders who wants to work really hard, and he probably will be phenomenally successful, and people will accuse him of being a Nepo baby, but it doesn't matter because if you're good at something, who cares who opened the door for you? It's when you walk in and when you can do a tremendous waltz that gets all tens from the judges. That's what matters, although it is always still fun to make fun of Nepo babies. Haley Joel Osment was also there, and I think he's lucky to have left with all of his limbs intact. He was the only person in our vicinity who was wearing a Dodgers cap, and he was cheering loudly every time the Dodgers got a hit. I think he secretly wants to marry Freddie Freeman. It really wasn't a secret, but he was very jovial and conversational, which I appreciate because sometimes when celebrities go out into the wild, they are like timid beasts and they make it seem like they're really disgusted to be spoken to. And Haley Joel Osment was not like that. And of course, he was the darling dumpling from The Sixth Sense. He looks a little different now. He's a little fuller. And he was great because, and I told him a story that I thought was very funny, which I realize in retrospect might have been offensive to him. I had a bike mechanic it was like one of those mobile bike mechanic trucks came to my house in LA, and the guy's name was Haley, and he looked exactly like Haley Joel Osment. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, he's given up fame and now he's a bike mechanic, because anyone who really gets deeply into bikes, like, that's all you care about and that's all you want to talk about. So I was like, yep, makes sense. It's on brand. Haley Joel Osment is now a bike nerd. And he laughed at that. And then I kind of realized what I was saying was, I thought you were such a has-been that you were working for $20 an hour fixing bikes in a mobile truck. And I didn't say that overtly, but I think that was the subtext. But he was still very nice and conversational and loves KROQ, which is the radio station where I started my broadcast career when I was 18 years old, back in the 18th century. In fact, there were other notables and luminaries there. I met Roberto Clemente Jr. I met Leslie Odom, who sang the national anthem and did a phenomenal job. It was so beautiful. It was one of the best renditions I had ever seen. He was one of the original cast members in Hamilton. He was really fun to talk to. And I asked him, do you sleep with a humidifier? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, Mariah Carey sleeps with 11. And he said, that's why she has so many #1 hits and so much money. So maybe he's going to add a few humidifiers to his room, but his voice is absolute perfection. Even though there were so many people, and Haley Joel Osment was the only celebrity I saw who was rocking Dodgers gear. And everyone there seemed to be pretty genuine Yankees fans, which I totally appreciated. I wouldn't have cared. I thought there were going to be more Dodgers fans there. I thought they were going to be obnoxious. There was such a large crowd gathered outside of Yankee Stadium, far more fans than ticketed customers for the evening, but they wanted to be there for the vibe. They wanted to be there for the party. They wanted to be there because they're like, the World Series is now in the Bronx and we're doing this. We're doing it right. Should have won game one, should have won game two. Clearly lost game three at home.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
Is the series over tonight? I hope not. Because I think those people who were gathered outside the stadium, some of them were pretty well lubricated. So much so, I thought they might have delivered the baby oil supply from Costco to one of Diddy's freak-offs. They were lubed and they were ready to go. They were also like, if things went sideways with some of the Dodgers fans, I feared for them. But they were few and far between, and the Dodgers fans were very, very well behaved, which means that the super mean bullies that hulk their way through Dodger Stadium, they're just the ones that live here and, probably can't make it out to New York for the World Series because they're not real baseball fans who would have sold a kidney to be there. But the Dodgers might win it all tonight. I hope they don't. I really hope somehow, some way, the Yankees can come back. And I'm wondering, because at least reality was setting in for Yankees fans. They were dejected. They looked upset. Brian Cashman walked by after the game. He looked like someone had murdered his cat. He looked inconsolable and he looked sullen and very serious, as you should, if so many poor decisions are being made. And obviously, the weight of the world rests on his shoulders, and it feels as though he and Aaron Boone have on some level shrugged. But at least they were realistic about what is happening, unlike the Kamala Harris campaign. She campaigned this weekend in Texas, which she's not going to win. And she campaigned with Beyonce, who did not sing. And that made the crowd very upset. So she didn't go on Joe Rogan because she wanted Joe Rogan to come to her. He doesn't do that. There's a reason he has his subject matter in his studio. It's his space. It's his podcast. And that means that everyone who enters is in the exact same space. And he's uncompromising. He would not go to her. Her campaign, apparently, according to what he put out on X, didn't want to do a 3-hour sit down because I don't think she has enough material, even though it would be a curious two-way conversation. I don't think she would be able to swing it. And I think she would be so worried about missteps and worried about what would be abstracted and memed from that conversation, which just goes to show you there's not a lot of depth or authenticity there. There's an awful lot of delusion. And everyone was asking me, like, what's going to happen with the election, especially Trump fans. There was one person there who definitely leans conservative, who can't come out publicly as a conservative because he's very good friends with Robert De Niro, who has gone crazy with his TDS. Fun actor to watch. Really horrible dog crap politics. So I understand that. But her campaign is so incredibly delusional. They think they're going to win when everyone was asking me what's really going to happen. At this point, it still feels like Trump has the momentum. The only outstanding, and I discussed this with Arnon Mishkin last week, he is the director of the Fox News decision desk. Did they get an accurate sample of Trump supporters in all the polls, or are they still underpolled? If that's the case, and not enough of them agreed to talk to pollsters, not enough of them picked up the phone or answered emails or texts, then that means that he's up by 5 points instead of under a point. But it feels like momentum is with him. And there was also another stunning statistic that I saw today as I was preparing for Outnumbered. Barack Obama, for Black men under 35, he had something like 81%, 82% of their support. 82% of Black men under 35 voted for President Obama. 63% voted for Hillary Clinton. So that was a drop. 53% voted for Joe Biden. That's when it gets concerning. But for what would be America's first Black female president, America's first female president, that number drops to 41%. That's really bad news. I feel like her outreach has been incredibly clumsy, and that just speaks to the delusion. I think the Yankees have as good of a shot as winning the World Series as Kamala does winning the presidency. That means it's going to be an uphill battle. Stranger things have happened. I love those freaky deaky nights. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app. Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.